GAMERA Rebirth is the newest Netflix anime series based on the giant monster Gamera, Kaiju from Japan. So, this series, it's a 6 episode series. Each episode's about 42 to 47 minutes long. This series follows 3 young boys, Junichi, sorry about that, Poco, and Joe. 3 kids on their final summer of grade school before they, graduate into a higher, junior high or however it works in Japan. Just trying to enjoy their summer and have a good summer. Who end up embroiled with Gamera and all these giant kaijus who are trying to destroy the city or attack people for unknown reasons, and they have to figure out a way to stop these kaijus. Not necessarily these kids, but the world at large, and these kids are in the middle. So this is a CGI cel shaded animated show anime. It's been done before several times. There's a lot of animes that have this. Netflix has a lot of animes like this. Knights of Sidonia. I think there's a Godzilla series that has similar CGI. I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest. It looks okay, it gets the job done, but it doesn't really look amazing. But like I said, it gets the job done, so I'm not gonna subtract a lot of points. It's not like it's overly bad. This animation just tends to be a little bit slower. I feel like a little clunky in some frames. Not necessarily an overly bad thing. It's not like super noticeable, but it is noticeable at times. So like I said, I'm not a really fan of the CGI, but like I said, I've seen it before, so I'm not gonna hold it against it. It's just a standard thing, maybe with the studio who made this animated series. But I want to say the story is really where this anime works for me. I like the kids, I like the characters, I love Gamera, who I wasn't really too familiar with before watching the series. I'm familiar with Godzilla and a lot of the monsters from his universe, and I kind of thought Gamera was one of his monsters. I've heard the name and I've seen him, and I just kind of assumed he was a Godzilla monster, but he's kind of like his own separate freaking thing. In his franchise, he is Godzilla, He fights all the evil monsters and he's the hero. So I wasn't too familiar with him, but by the end I absolutely loved him, and I'm probably going to go check out some of his movies after this. I guess we'll see if I can find him. But like I said, I like the story. It's very simple. It's very kaiju story where we follow these humans, specifically these kids, who are living in this world where these giant kaiju start attacking, and they have one kaiju in their corner who's defending them from these evil giant monsters. And I thought these kids were going to be annoying and grate me and just be like these horrible characters, but overall they were good characters. They were interesting. I mean, they're still children, so they still act like children at times, but it works in the story. You understand why they're acting this way or doing this thing, because again, they're children. They don't grate me. I think they have interesting backstories. Their friendship is very endearing. I absolutely love them. There's of course other characters, Tanaka I believe his name, and what was her name? No, Tazaki and Emiko. Sorry, I have a list right here. I can't remember their names. They're members of this foundation, the Uzimo Foundation, who kind of babysit these 3 kids. And I'll get to spoilers in a little bit. Who babysit these kids because they have a connection to Gamera, which I don't want to kind of spoil or give away. Overall, like I said, it's a very interesting story. Very basic, but the emotions there. It's very entertaining. These type of shows or movies with these kaiju are all about the kaijus and their battles. And I think they do a fantastic job. Even though I'm not a big fan of the animation style, sorry. They do a good job with the fights. They work really well. I love when Gamera's fighting these other monsters. I don't necessarily love these other monsters' designs. There's only one that I really loved. It was one with like a big old sword head, and he did like this kind of somersault thing where he would just slice in the air and just destroy things. I thought he was very cool. The other monsters were fine, but somewhat generic. After watching so many Godzilla movies, you really have to up your designs. And not necessarily that they were bad designs, just that I thought they were okay. Nothing too, amazing where I was like, oh my gosh, I love this monster. I want to freaking take pictures of it and put it on my wall or something like that. Very basic designs, or very interesting designs. Nothing super amazing. But I did like Gamera's design. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the character or the monster, but by the end of it, I really liked him. I love his design. I love how his powers and everything work. Like I had no idea he could do a lot of things he could do. So I was really pleased with that. Overall, I would give this series a 7 out of 10. It's really fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I enjoy Godzilla movies, and I was kind of skeptical about this. I wasn't sure. I was like, is it gonna be really like Godzilla? In some ways, it is, but it kind of works. Gamera is his own character with his own powers and everything. And he's very interesting. He's a very fun character, I think, in my opinion. Or maybe it's just me because he made me laugh a lot of times. I thought he was a cool character. Like I said, 7 out of 10. I do recommend it. It's on Netflix. 6 episodes, about 42 to 47 minutes. Like I said, so it's not very long. You can get through the series in a day, or watch an episode a day, and it's very fun. It's enjoyable. So I want to talk spoilers. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, this is your chance to leave. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're talking spoilers. Okay, so we follow these three boys. Like I said, Joe, Poco, and Junichi. And in the beginning of the show, like I said, they're trying to enjoy their summer vacation. They're trying to buy this radio because I believe Poco is moving away. That's what they keep mentioning. So they want to get this radio so they can stay in communication. I think it's Poco or Junichi. One of them is moving away, but either way, they want this radio so they can communicate. So the first episode is them kind of us learning about these characters and their world a little bit, as in the background, not in their world, but we see these scientists and everyone else focusing on these monsters. There's news reports with like monsters attacking a bunch of people, but these kids are just kind of living their life. Like they don't pay attention to any of that stuff. They maybe think it's a little bit of fake, but they eventually get the money for this radio, and they get jumped by these Americans who are living there because their parents are stationed there. Brody specifically is the main bully, and they beat up these kids and they steal their money. So they get really mad, especially Poco, who's just like, this was gonna be, we worked for a year to get this money. This was gonna be how we were gonna stay in touch, because it's like 1989, so there's no internet or anything yet. So they decide to go fight these bullies, and when they go attack these bullies, quote unquote attack, when they confront them, this is when the giant monsters, these flying lizard bat things, pterodactyls, I guess you can say is the closest description. They're not really dragon-like, they're kind of pterodactyl-like. They start attacking the area where they're at. Shinjuku? Tokyo? I don't know, I want to say Tokyo, I'm just going to say Tokyo. They start attacking the city, and like all the boys, they stop fighting, and they kind of get scared, and they're like, what's happening? Are we going to war? And they look across the town, and they see it's on fire and being attacked by all these monsters, and then a bunch of jets are fighting, and they're just really scared. So they try to, they're like, we gotta get out of here. But when they decide to leave, those kaijus attack them, or at least a few smaller ones. So they have to kind of run for their lives, and it's very risky, and they almost get eaten. But as soon as, right before they're about to get eaten by two of these giant or mini-sized little kaijus, Gamera appears. He appears and sends the shockwave, which hurts these little kaijus, and the kids are able to escape, but they end up helping Brody, who gets left behind by his friends, and he's very scared. In the episode, this is the first episode, it ends with the Foundation people, Tanzaka and Imiko coming to pick up the kids, and they're like, hey, we just want to talk to you about Gamera and these monsters. So this is where the first episode ends. The second episode, picks up where after their conversations and everything, we find out what happened. They're like, oh, you're important. For some reason, you have a connection to Gamera and these monsters. So they give them like these, they're kind of like smartphones. Like at first, I didn't realize that it was taking place in 1989. So I thought, it was modern days, but it's, almost 1990. So they don't have smartphone technology. So they get like what essentially are smartphones, but a lot bulkier and everything. They're actually kind of cool, so they can communicate with them and the Foundation people. Anyway, this episode, one of the Foundation facilities had all these little eggs, and they hatch and they escape, and they release like these lizard kaijus or whatever. And the kids they feel important because the Foundation's like, you guys are important, so they kind of go on this search, in the sewers, because Brody's just like, I heard my dad talking about this operation they're having there, and this top secret. We should go, check it out because we're so important. So Brody joins the three. They become a four friend group, and they go down to the sewers. They're attacked by, these monsters and everything. Gamera comes in and freaking ends up destroying these things. And this episode just kind of moves the plot along a little longer. Cool fight at the end with the giant lizard thing and Gamera. And we just find out a little bit of information about that foundation and more about the kids and uniting with Brody and everything. The third episode, the kids are being taken to an island on this high-tech boat by the Foundation, and they're attacked by a giant sea monster. It's a very cool chase, first on the boat and then like in a little submarine underwater and everything, which ends up with Gamera fighting this giant sea monster kind of thing. It's very cool. I love the Gamera fights. Like I said, I alluded, they're fantastic. That's why we watch these Kaiju things. But like I said, Gamera fights him. I love a lot of his finishers. When he killed the lizard, he, had this like fiery hand thing where he shoved it down the lizard and kind of burned him from the inside out, which is very cool. His first finisher is like this big fireball, and then I want to say this one, he does this spin thing where he goes in the shell and he just kind of spins really fast like a blade and just kind of chops him in half. I don't remember if that's how he finished him or if he finished him a different way, but I know that's one of his finishers. So anyway, Gamera saves them, and then it ends with them going to the island, or finally going to the island in the next episode. This is the fourth episode where I'm blanking on the fourth episode. Who do they fight in the fourth episode? I can't remember who they fight in the fourth episode. I'm freaking lacking over here. No, it's the sword guy, the one that I freaking really like. So they go to the facility and they tell them a little bit more about these kaijus. In this facility, they're holding a big kaiju underneath them, and this is one of the first kaijus they found, and they're doing experiments and everything on them. And there's like a spaceship there. It's like really big facility, so they just kind of show them around and everything and explain what's going on. And then the kids end up finding out that they're kind of trapped in this room, like, because they're like, oh, this room is for you guys to hang out in, and they trap them in. And so two of the kids, Joe, who is the big kind of brother of the group, he's like the big tough one, he decides that something's wrong. He doesn't trust them. He has past trauma where he has trouble trusting people, so he's like, they're not here to help us, they're tricking us. So he decides to go search, and Junichi joins him. So they go searching, and when they go searching and they get separated, this is when the sword kaiju attacks him, and he just starts destroying the facility. And as the episodes have been going on, we have been finding out that these kaijus love eating kids. We find out in the first episode. We don't really know why, but there was other kids that were being taken to this facility that were also eaten. So we just kind of assumed they like to eat kids, and we find out in the next episode why. But there's something special about some of the kids, specifically Poco, who has a special trait. So anyway, the sword monster attacks the facility. Gamera, of course, shows up to save him, but like Gamera gets jacked up. He gets his arm chopped off. He gets stabbed a bunch of times, but he's able to pull through. He does. This is where he does his spinning attack. He does his spinning attack and he kills the sword kaiju, but he's kind of really messed up at this point. And the kids, they finally get together, and they end up in the underground facility of this base. In the next episode, we kind of find out what exactly is going on. So 100,000 years before the beginning of this episode, there was this great advanced civilization. We don't know how advanced, they just kind of tell us a little bit, who create all these kaijus, and the kaijus are created to pretty much wipe out humanity. Humanity has grown to, several billion people, and they're taking up all the resources on the planet. They're like, the only way we can save this planet and mankind is if we wipe out, like, almost 99% of them. So in the past, they created these kaijus, but a group of people got to Gamera, and they reprogrammed him so he was a good guy and would fight the evil kaijus, which there's 5 evil big ones, and Gamera would have made 6, but he turns out to be a good one. And we don't really get a lot of information about the past, what happened exactly, but we do know that one of the kaijus went crazy and ended up destroying most of mankind, and they barely survived. So the kids see this flashback that explains this to them, and they find out that the reason why they want these kids is because some kids have this special DNA trait, which if eaten by one of the kaijus, like nourishes them and activates their program where they go on a rampage and they'll eat, like I said, 99% of the population, which is kind of what happened in the past. And Poco, he has this DNA trait, which is why Gamera keeps showing up to help him, because he's kind of programmed to help him and fight off these evil kaijus. So we learn about this, and we end up finding out that that Foundation and Imiko, specifically the scientist who's been taking care of them and who's been acting as a friend to them, is evil, and she kind of betrays them. So she's, they got these kids here because they wanted to make sure they had the positive trait, because there's two traits. There's negatives that will make the monsters go crazy, and there's the positive that makes them do what they're programmed to do. So we find out the Foundation and everything's evil, and they brought these kids here specifically to feed it to the kaiju that's underneath them. So, these kids find out and they get captured by the Foundation, and thankfully, gotta look at his name, Tazaka. I keep wanting to say Tanaka. Tazaka is not a bad guy. He was kind of brought in recently, and he's just like, this isn't cool. At first, he thinks that they're planning to populate the moon or something like that, but when he finds out that they're trying to wipe out like 99% of the population, he comes up with a plan with one of the other Foundation employees to, save the kids and take off on the rocket ship. Sorry, dry throat. So they end up saving the kids. They escape on the spaceship, but the kaiju underneath the plant awakens, and he starts attacking. He tries attacking the kids, but Gamera comes up. He starts fighting him, but he's too beat up. So the kaiju just knocks him out, and then he shoots a laser up into space to hit the spaceship, and he does. Ends up killing one of the guys who was trying to help him, and it messes up the spaceship. And then he starts flying up after it, and Gamera ends up like flying up to space and killing him. But the spaceship is badly damaged, so they have to take an escape pod. And then Joe ends up sacrificing himself to save his friends. For whatever reason, I think this pod is messed up. Someone needs to be inside the spaceship to press a release switch to save him. So the kids save Tazaka, and they put him in the pod. But no one can hit the switch, so Joe, again, the big brother type character, goes out to hit the thing. As the spaceship keeps flying, it's on fire and everything, and he saves his friends, who end up getting saved by Gamera because their parachute doesn't escape or work. So they end up on this island, and they think Joe is dead, and this is the final episode. One of the kaiju from the first episode comes back as this genetically enhanced monster, or one of the little ones has been genetically enhanced. So he hits the island to finish off Gamera and eat Poco so he can activate his program. So Gamera is like practically dying, so all the civilians are protecting him and trying to help him, and ends up with this this big keep away from Gamera, and eventually at the end, Gamera gets revived, and he fights the giant kaiju, and he saves them. Cool fight. And then the show ends with the kids trying to, enjoy their summer as much as they can. They're growing up. They're missing Joe. They kind of have to move on. It was this big, amazing summer, but life goes on. And luckily, they were able to save the planet. And the show ends with Gamera essentially dying. He turns into dust, using up the last of his energy. But the final scene, or in the episode, is the three kids going to visit one of a Foundation base, I believe it is. And they go in there, and they see this tube, and they see a little baby Gamera, and they're like, "You protected us, and now it's our job to protect us." And that's almost where the show ends. There's a end credit scene where we see Tazaka. He essentially creates a smartphone. He uses those phones I was talking about earlier and uses that technology to create smartphones, which is kind of funny. But that end scene has another part where one of those old phones that was given to the kids, it activates, and then we hear Joe like trying to communicate to them. So it ends up being that Joe is alive somewhere. So I'm assuming they're gonna do a second season, but kind of I was worried the show was going to end with a child death, but apparently it doesn't. It sets up possibly a next season or something. Like I said, overall, this show was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. I love the character's journey. Like I don't do justice explaining everything. Cool kaiju fights and everything. The animation's the only place where I'm a little, didn't love it, but it does its job. It does it well. Overall, lots of fun. I do recommend it. If you haven't watched it, if you love Godzilla movies, if you like giant monster movies, if you love kaijus, go check it out. It's on Netflix. Do recommend it. It's fun. It's a fun show. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.